Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you all today. Yes, I'm a 63-year-old recovering museum director. And you can start the images whenever you like there. The images that you'll see accompanying my talk have nothing to do with the talk. It is an extension of my memory. When I work, I keep myself surrounded by images of things that I've seen recently, long time ago, about 5,000 images that just cycle through on screens around me, in front of me, because it's more interesting to have my memory refreshed by pictures and to have it taken in random directions all the time. And so they're more interesting to look at than me. But if you get bored of looking at that, you can look at me as well. Today I'm going to talk about failure, in praise of failure, because I think failure is our friend and failure needs to be embraced. It was Vito Acconci who helped me understand the value of failure. He said if it wasn't for failure, how would he have known to move from poetry to sculpture, performance, and to architecture? How would he have known if it wasn't for the failure of each thing he tried that would push him into something new? David Gordon, the choreographer, a man I admire enormously, said, I think revolution is frequently the result of where you find yourself standing, what you find yourself standing in the middle of. Archaeology can result in revolution. So today I'm going to quickly run through my own archaeology and how it relates to various failures, often technologically related, failures that I was either directly or indirectly related to, and how they've helped in my own life. I started at Syracuse University as a journalism student and a political science major, thinking that what I wanted to do when I grew up would be an editorial writer for the New York Times or something like that, some high school ambition like that. And of course I was also a photographer and worked in a variety of ways for the city newspaper and for the university newspaper. And everything seemed fine. I was on track. I was one of the editors of the university paper. And then I went to Woodstock and with my little Nikon, and I saw people carrying around these 10-pound black and white portable video recorders. And I thought, oh my God, I have to have one of those. I mean, it was the greatest thing I'd ever seen. And of course, it also meant you could go backstage. You could do anything with it. I mean, a Nikon didn't get you much respect by the time of Woodstock, but a Portapack, you could go anywhere. Plus, when I saw those images, those glorious gray and white images in real time, it made me realize that journalism, as I thought I understood it, was going to change. And so I went to my thesis advisor at the Newhouse School and said I wanted to stop doing newspapers and stop doing photography and take up portable video. And he kind of looked at me and he said, no, come on, we have a television school. If you want to do television, you can transfer into the television school and study broadcast television. I said, no, I want to do this portable video. This is going to change journalism. He said, you know, if you want to play, you should go to the art school. Because, you know, that's what they do in the art school. And I, you know, being the kind of person who wasn't going to take a challenge like that, standing up or sitting down, I said, okay, I'll go there. And so I just walked out of the journalism school, no more classes there. I just walked away and walked into the art school, into a studio called Experimental Studios. And the first guy I met was this totally crazy guy named Jack Nelson. I said, I want to learn about video. He said, I don't know what that is, but great. Fantastic. So I started doing that and had a great studio mate who became quickly my best friend. We've remained very close ever since. His name is Bill Viola. And Bill was a refugee from advertising who came into the same experimental studio. And the two of us went out and bought a Portapack and started fooling around. You know, so started playing, just like the guy said. It was great. Anyhow, school didn't work out so well for me because I was a little bit too radical in my politics and one of the anti-war events that we were involved with was blamed for the burning down of the geology building, which we had nothing to do with, honestly. It was an electrical fire. But when it came to a graduate fellowship that I was offered, they changed their mind. They thought I might be too dangerous as a graduate fellow, and that really bothered me. So I walked away from Syracuse without a degree, just left. And a person I knew then said, you know, the Everson Museum, the city museum, has just gotten a new director, and we need a photograph of him. I know you don't like to do photographs anymore, but I'll pay you $100 for a photograph. So I said, all right, I'll take a photograph of anyone for $100. In 1970, $100 was 4 lids of pot, a month's rent. I mean, you know, it was serious money for those of you who are too young to know. So I took the job, went to meet this guy, walked into his office. It's kind of a serious-looking guy wearing a suit, you know, short hair, round glasses, and staring at him in my little tie-dye T-shirt and my Jufro with my Nikon around my neck. And he's not even looking at me, not even looking up from his desk. And finally, he kind of looks up at his desk and back to his papers again. And I'm now furious, right? I didn't like the university. I surely wasn't going to like the museum. These institutions had to go. But finally, I got the courage to say, look, buddy, this museum you've taken over, it's total bullshit. It's got a 1 zip code membership, and if it doesn't become a television station in the next decade, it's going to be obsolete. So now he kind of looks up from his desk over his glass and says, oh, if you're so fucking smart, why don't you be my assistant? And I said, well, I'm a senior at Syracuse. He said, I don't remember asking you that. Why do you think I care? He said, I've made you an offer. There's your office. Show up tomorrow morning, or I guess we'll know who's full of shit, won't we? So I walked out of there thinking, art museum, art museum career, working in an art museum. And so the next morning I showed up, and it was amazing, you know. And of course, the first thing I found out by failing to make good at Syracuse was that sometimes you meet your mentor where you least expect to. And Harithis was an extraordinary mentor and still is a great friend and a great mentor to me. And we worked there together. He made me the world's first curator of video art. And so by the end of 1971, I was curating exhibitions. I had no idea what curating an exhibition meant. I didn't know you had to actually do budgets, for instance, and make plans. I would just call up artists that I'd meet and say, you want to do an exhibition? Let's do an exhibition. So I, called up Namjoon Pike. I said, you want to do an exhibition? He said, oh, yes, you boy genius, we do exhibition. Namjoon comes up, and voila, I've met my second mentor. And, any of those of you who have met Namjoon Pike during his unfortunately too short life know that you've met a genius. But Pike was a different kind of genius. He only slept 3 or 4 hours at a time and at different periods during the day. So if you were part of his circle of people he called boy genius, that meant you were on his phone list because he was up on all hours of the night thinking and doing weird things. And I remember one night being awakened by a phone call, and I pick up the phone, and Pike had this great habit. He knew he was waking people up, so he'd be silent for like a minute. You'd pick up the phone, and then you'd hear, and then, Namjoon, what? He'd say, oh, boy genius, I realize information is not a highway. And this was Pike's idea, by the way. The information was a highway. He said, I realize it's not a highway. Information is ocean. People in rowboat in ocean. And I said, yeah, all right, guy. That's it. I mean, I had no clue that he had invented Google at that moment in 1972. But that was the way Pike worked. And, going to sleep on that, and of course, again, clearly having no idea what he meant. Although it did stay in the back of my mind, it still pushed me into thinking, what does video have to do with an art museum? I mean, these museums, God, they are so antiquated. They're so locked to this formal architecture, these formal buildings, these solid structures where our audience is out there. Some of them don't feel comfortable coming in here. Some of them don't want to come in here. Some of them can't come in here. And yet they're out there. This is the audience that artists want to connect with. Harris had us teaching at Auburn Maximum Security Prison every Friday. We would bring video cameras there, but we couldn't even bring the tapes out of there. I mean, they were amazing tapes that these prisoners made. Anyhow, it became very clear to me that the museum had to change. And so I kept pushing the idea. We had a little video viewing gallery. It just seemed so lame. There wasn't even cable television yet, anywhere. So people would come and sit on little benches and watch videotapes on little black and white monitors. I think, this is not right. They shouldn't come to the museum to sit and watch television. This is, you know, Gregory Bateson's perfect example of Gregory Bateson's idea of mistaking the menu for the food. You know, this was like wrong. And so we continued to work in this way until a political event forced us out. We did the first museum exhibition of Herman Nietzsche's Orgy Mystery Theater, which was pretty intense. And the next day, we were all pushed out of the museum. And Harris moved to Texas. And I moved to Long Beach, California, where they wanted to build a new museum. And they said, we heard you had the idea of maybe a museum should have its own television station. I said, yeah, I've written about that. They said, well, come and do that for us. We're going to build a new art museum with I.M. Pei, who had built the Everson. And I said, sure, California with a job? That's fantastic. $15,000 a year job in 1975? I mean, I was in heaven. Since I had a screenwriter older brother who was making less than that, and he was, you know, living in Santa Monica, now I was really happy. So I moved out to Long Beach, and we created a video post-production studio, because what we realized right away was that artists had no access to post-production. Artists were making videotapes were just much, much too long. The only one who I really knew who understood making short videos was Bill Wegman. He had that from the beginning. He made these 30-second and 2-minute videos. They were perfect. But most artists, they hadn't even thought about editing or an editing culture or the grammar of constructing work through the use of editing, because the tools weren't available. So we decided to make them available. And that was fun. And we worked with I.M. Pei on the construction of this new museum, and that was going to have a cable channel head end built into the museum. So I thought, this is not bad. I'm now 24 years old. I figure I've done a few things. This is great. Then a political scandal happens in the city, and finds out that the city is completely corrupt. And so we have to then cancel that museum. I moved to Berkeley. I realized that the museum is even more problematic than ever. And so from one failure to another, I find myself now in Boston as the director of the Institute of Contemporary Art. And there, we decided to try to work with public television. Why not give them a chance? I mean, it's public television. And we created a collaboration with WGBH called the Contemporary Art Television Fund, and it was great for producing work with artists like Dara Birnbaum and others. It was really amazing. But the fact of the matter is that public television was already a dinosaur. There was nothing that could be done to really transform public television. They missed the boat. And as good as it is, as important as it is, it's still a dinosaur. And so I've moved from there to the Whitney, where in 1993, we did a biennial that still brings me hate mail. But what was more important in 1993 was that we started the first museum website. Following the development of the Mosaic graphical browser, we went online and decided, let's push the museum out into the world as a website. That worked pretty well and has continued to develop, and now museum websites are absolutely de rigueur. Every important museum, even small museums, my God, my dry cleaner has a website at this point. but all museums have great ones, the Tate, the Modern, the Whitney, SF MoMA, where I worked as well. And it's interesting that that transformation has taken place. But the fact of the matter is that all of that has failed. Because what it's failed to recognize is that during this period of time, from the beginning of the development of independent video, through the development of the web as a way of bringing independent poetic and artist voices out to a general population, that the idea, the line that distinguished writers from readers became erased, not just blurred, erased. And we now live in a world that's in a complete blur, where writers and readers inhabit the same space. If that's the case, what becomes of an institution like a museum? And what becomes of an institution like an art school? Thank you very much.